But first at 5, police are asking for your help. They are trying to find a 17-year-old girl who has been missing for almost 48 hours. Tonight, we are asking a lot of questions about the disappearance of a local teenager. Adding to this mystery, she went missing the very same day her family's house caught fire in Park County.
It's ludicrous because we want to know what's going on, you know. I mean, this is a tight-knit community. A lot of us know each other. We've been up here for years.
I think the concern of the community mainly, certainly the concern for me, is that, you know, we don't know anybody and we don't know anything about who's out there looking for her. She clearly wasn't at the house. Her car was found at the house according to the news, but she wasn't at the house. And there doesn't seem to be much of a search going on for where she is.
I know that there are a lot of rumors floating around about what happened on that property, and people here don't know what to believe.
Early on the evening of December 1st, 2017, authorities in Colorado were dispatched to a home located in Bailey, a small town roughly 45 miles southwest of Denver. There, at an isolated home in rural Park County, along Deer Creek, they came upon an active fire. A 911 call made minutes prior said that multiple people were inside the home causing damage. But by the time authorities arrived, the house was already on fire, and no suspects were seen. Fire rescue personnel were brought out to extinguish the blaze, which had been started intentionally. Despite initial reports that no one had been inside at the time the fire was started, that would change in the days to come, as the homeowners attempted to track down their daughter, a 17-year-old that was supposed to have been at a school event that evening but had gone missing earlier that afternoon. To this day, events surrounding her mysterious disappearance and subsequent death remain clouded in mystery. This is the story of Maggie Long. Maggie Long was born on December 17, 1999, as one of at least 3 daughters and 1 son born to her parents. Maggie's parents were both of Chinese descent, but had grown up in a Chinese community in North Vietnam, eventually fleeing to the US during the Vietnam War. In the years since, they had settled in the region of Bailey, Colorado, an unincorporated community of roughly 9,000 people in northeastern Park County, located less than an hour southwest of Denver. Bailey is perhaps most well known for 2 or 3 things, which stand diametrically opposed to each other in terms of overall tone. The first is a well-known Coney Island hot dog stand located in town near the entrance to the Pike National Forest, which attracts a lot of regional tourists every year. The second are multiple references to the town made in the popular show South Park, which is set in a fictionalized Colorado town nearby. The third, however, is a violent incident that took place in Bailey, involving an armed gunman named Dwayne Morrison. In 2006, Morrison took 7 female students hostage at Platte Canyon High School, sexually assaulting several and killing one before being shot and killed by police officers at the scene. Sadly, one of Maggie's older sisters, Lena, was one of the 7 students taken captive, but thankfully survived and was unharmed. There, in Bailey, Maggie's parents were well known and respected. They owned and operated a handful of Chinese restaurants in the area, as well as a liquor store, and had invested in some local real estate, successfully, mind you. The Long family was rather well off, and lived in a large home on a large piece of land in a very scenic part of the state. They were also one of the few Asian American families in the area, but Maggie's sisters never recalled facing much discrimination because of their ethnicity. As of December 2017, Maggie was 17 years old, due to turn 18 later that month, and was a senior at Platte Canyon High School, the same school attended by her sister a decade prior. She was one of roughly 300 students attending at the time and was set to graduate the following spring. According to most reports, Maggie was incredibly popular amongst the student body and was involved in a countless number of extracurriculars, as recounted by her older sister Connie to NBC News. She was a very involved student. She had so many interests and just loved trying new things and being part of as much of life as she could. Maggie was regarded by friends and teachers at the school as kind and genuine, but also equally ambitious and majestic, which had always been one of her favorite words. She took part in many school events, such as live performances, and seemed to have a knack for theater. In addition to performing in many of the school's events, she was also an active member of the Venue Theater in nearby Conifer. Shannon Monahan, the mother of Maggie's best friend Katie, told Colorado Public Radio that she spent a lot of time with Maggie because of her friendship with her daughter, and felt as though Maggie was a second daughter for her. She stated, "Maggie had such a huge heart and a wonderful spirit, a wonderful smile. She loved everyone." On Friday, December 1st, 2017, a concert was being held at Maggie's high school, which she had helped plan. As a member of the local theater department, she had helped arrange for some local bands to play in the event and was in charge of the VIP lounge for it. After school got out that afternoon, Maggie told her friends that she was going to head home to pick up some cookies and water for those attending the event, and she also planned to change clothes while she was there. She left the school at around 3:30 p.m. and began driving home, approximately 11 miles away, a drive that usually took her about 20 minutes. However, she would not return when she was scheduled to, about an hour or so later, resulting in her friends from the school attempting to reach her via phone unsuccessfully. A little while later, Maggie's older sister Connie left work and arrived at the school to look for Maggie. There, she was greeted by some of Maggie's friends who had been looking for her, later telling NBC News, "Right away I had a gut feeling. Something wasn't right. Maggie is very responsible and would have never flaked on something like this." At around the same time that Connie began heading to the family's home, expecting or hoping to find Maggie there, a 911 call was placed from it. Located north of Bailey itself, in a scenic rural area along Deer Creek, the Long family home was set several hundred feet back from Deer Creek Road, along County Road 43. The 911 call was placed just after 7 p.m. by a tenant living in the attic of the home, who claimed that there were people downstairs arguing and possibly fighting. He apparently did not feel safe leaving the attic and had been texting Connie, Maggie's sister, as the troubling events downstairs unfolded. By the time Connie arrived at the property a short time later, at approximately 7:20 p.m., fire rescue and police personnel had already gathered at the scene. They had arrived shortly after the 911 call had been placed, responding to a fire that had broken out inside of the home. Suspiciously, Maggie's vehicle was found at the house, yet there seemed to be no sign of the 17-year-old. Initial reports were that nobody had been found inside of the home, but that would change in the hours and days to come. In the days that followed, a judge issued a gag order in this case, which so far featured a mysterious fire and a missing teenager. Maggie Long was believed by the public to be missing, with her disappearance coinciding with the bizarre fire that had broken out at her family's home. That evening, Friday, December 1st, Maggie's sisters would post on social media that they were looking for Maggie but had been unable to find her. Police would announce that they were investigating Maggie's communications from after school let out that afternoon, at around 2:30, up until 8 o'clock that evening, when officers had gained access to the home. Yet, they were frustratingly vague about the other facts of the case, such as whether or not they were actively looking for Maggie and in what way her disappearance was related to the fire. The fire was investigated as an arson, as it appeared to have been intentionally set in multiple areas of the home. Investigators theorized that it had been set to cover up other crimes committed inside the house, such as robbery. However, the fate of Maggie would remain undetermined for several days, with police not commenting on whether they had recovered any human remains from the scene or were actively searching for her. On Saturday, December 2nd, Park County Sheriff's officials announced that they were working a crime scene off of County Road 43, but that they weren't planning to organize any search parties for the 17-year-old. On Sunday, December 3rd, the sheriff's office posted a vague message to Facebook, which read, "Due to the serious nature of this investigation, we ask that you keep the Long family in your prayers. We are not able to release any further information at this time." Speaking to news station Denver 7 that Sunday, Park County Undersheriff Dave Wohlers stated, "We are not ruling anything in or anything out. We're in full investigative mode. We are as perplexed as anyone. Anything's possible. We're trying to put together the pieces of the puzzle, and the only thing I can say is it's a work in progress." Initially, authorities had reported that no human remains were found at the scene. But that changed when a week later, the Park County Sheriff's Office announced that the remains of 17-year-old Maggie Long had been discovered in the fire at her parents' home, and her death was being investigated as a homicide. Because of the circumstances at the crime scene, it was believed that an altercation had taken place between Maggie and her assailants. However, because this is a case that has remained open and active for the past 5 years, specific details about the crime and the crime scene have never been released. We would learn some more details about both later on, such as how Maggie was killed, but more specific details remain something known only by police officials and the offender, or offenders. Maggie's remains were found at the scene on the evening of Friday, December 1st, 2017, but her family wasn't informed about this discovery until hours later, after her sisters had posted about her disappearance on social media. Her remains had been sent off for an autopsy, and the coroner's report would remain under seal while the investigation was ongoing, but would officially list her cause of death as homicide. The weekend that this horrible story began unfolding, the first weekend of December 2017, a BOLO alert was issued to the press for a young white male that was likely heavily armed. This BOLO, be on the lookout, was issued accidentally, but seemed to be aimed at a possible suspect in this case. The suspect was described as a white male in his 20s, who had been seen driving a late 90s or early 2000s model minivan that was light in color. The BOLO alert claimed that this individual had possibly suffered some flash burns to his arms or face, but there was no idea how authorities had come to this determination. Later, authorities would claim that the BOLO had been issued in error. It was supposed to have been sent internally to other police agencies in the area, and was rescinded just hours later. In the days that followed, police would announce that multiple items were missing from the scene, indicating a motive of robbery. The items missing included a 9mm Beretta handgun, an AK-47 styled rifle, 2,000 rounds of ammunition, a green gun safe, multiple jade figurines, and gasoline. Almost immediately, it was theorized that Maggie might have arrived home unexpectedly, perhaps interrupting the robbery in progress, and that had resulted in her death. Police would collect DNA from specific individuals that investigators wanted to speak with, which reportedly included family members, friends, and associates of Maggie's family. This was likely done in an effort to eliminate possible matches from evidence left at the scene, although what had been found remains clouded in mystery. One of the men initially suspected of possible involvement was the upstairs tenant, whose 911 call had drawn police to the scene, but he appears to have been eliminated as a suspect early on. Months later, FBI officials would state that there was a high probability that someone in the community had come into contact with a suspect or someone else involved in her murder. It was theorized that this person might live in the community and may either be following the case closely in the press or had grown detached from their typical behavior and relationships in the weeks that followed. Police would later release descriptions of 2 vehicles sought in connection with the crime, a Chevy Astro van and a Ford Ranger truck. However, they would not reveal how these vehicles were connected to the murder of Maggie Long. Maggie's family would write a letter to the public, which was then shared by a family friend on social media on December 9th, 2017, roughly 1 week after her death. It read, "The fear of death takes away the joy of living. Our beloved sister, daughter, granddaughter, cousin, niece, friend, and classmate. Maggie was a joy in all our lives. As many of you are aware, on the night of Friday, December 1, 2017, Maggie moved on from this world. Our hearts are broken, and this loss has been especially significant knowing the impact that our Maggie had on this small mountain community. We thank everyone in Bailey, as well as those in communities near and far that Maggie's life has touched, for their support and love shared. Our family continues to work with the Park County Sheriff's Office and extended agencies. We want to thank them for their tremendous efforts. We are all committed to seeking justice for Maggie. To the Bailey community, please report any suspicious vehicles, individuals, or activities along County Road 43 in Bailey, Colorado on December 1, 2017 to the investigative tip line at 303-239-4243. To those who have respected our privacy and will continue to respect our privacy as we mourn, we are grateful. In the coming days, we will have arrangements for a celebration of life for Maggie and will make announcements as those plans are finalized. Thank you everyone for sharing your strength and kind thoughts with us. The Long family. In the weeks and months to come, the Long family would have to not only put Maggie to rest, but say goodbye to the region around Bailey. They now live in the Denver area, about an hour away. Maggie's death was their second unfortunate encounter with violent offenders in the region, with Maggie's older sister Lena having been taken hostage in the 2016 incident at the high school. While Maggie's siblings struggled to overcome their loss, their parents were forever changed, with Maggie's sister Connie telling Colorado Public Radio, "My parents' retirement from the restaurant business was kind of in the making, but Maggie's death really catapulted that process. The night that she died, they stopped working and they did not return to the restaurant. It's been a huge change in both of my parents. I don't think they'll ever truly heal from the death of our sister." In the days that followed this tragic loss in early December, the family was asked to keep quiet by investigators as they tried to figure out as much as possible about the incident before going public, which they finally did a week later. However, police wouldn't issue a press release in the case until February of 2018, roughly 6 weeks later, when the people that they had in mind as possible suspects might have already fled the region, having done everything they could to distance themselves from the events in Bailey. In the year after Maggie's murder, investigators continued to work on the case rather quietly, with police officials not really making any public disclosures until months had already passed. In May of 2018, Park County Sheriff's officials announced that Maggie's home had been intentionally targeted by the offender or offenders, giving credence to what many had been publicly speculating for roughly 6 months. However, at the same time, they would also release a sketch of a person possibly connected to the case, who would be referred to as Suspect Number 1 in the months and years to come. He was a young white male reportedly seen at the crime scene at the time Maggie Long was killed, but more on him later. Weeks later, in June of 2018, it was discovered that Park County investigators were looking into a possible connection to a case in Missouri, which bore many similarities. In it, 2 young male suspects had broken into a house with the intention of stealing firearms and had set a young woman on fire. However, in that case, the woman had survived, and the suspects were later identified and arrested. Links through DNA would prove unsuccessful, indicating that the offenders were not the same, and the vast geographic distance between the 2 crimes seemed to confirm that. In the months to come, things would go rather quiet. It wasn't until 2019 that we began to learn more about this tragic story, and the most heinous details were yet to come. Now, we're going to pause for just a moment to hear a word from today's sponsors. In January of 2019, the Park County Sheriff's Office announced the formation of the Maggie Long Task Force, a collection of law enforcement agents working on her case, which would begin to publish information in the hopes that an added spotlight would expedite the process. This task force was launched alongside a website of the same name, www.maggielongtaskforce.com, which sadly seems to have gone inactive in the years since. However, the task force itself continues to be active, combining the efforts of the local sheriff's office, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, CBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, and the Denver Division of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. Late that month, January of 2019, authorities would hold a press conference, during which they announced this newly formed task force and also revealed some new information about the case, much of which had not been made public knowledge as of yet.
On today's press conference to update you on the recent developments of the Maggie Long case. As a newly elected sheriff of Park County, I've been briefed extensively on the Maggie Long murder, and I'm here to provide you with additional information with the hope that someone may recall a significant detail in this case and provide this information to our task force. Before I begin, on behalf of the Park County Sheriff's Office and all the investigators and staff involved in this investigation, we would like to express our deepest sympathies to the family and friends of Maggie Long. We cannot express enough our sincere condolences to Maggie Long's loved ones and for your loss. We realize it has been a tough year for all of you. The response from the citizens of Park County and the public has been overwhelmingly supportive as we've continued our investigation for a suspect and mourn the loss of a young life in our community. We would like to thank the residents of Park County for your patience and assistance during the last 13 months as we worked through leads and tips on the investigation. Many of you knew Maggie. She was a smart, beautiful 17-year-old girl who was in charge of the VIP section for the concert at our high school on Friday night, December 1st, 2017. She went home that day to get more cookies and water for the audience, telling her friends, "I'll be right back." And she was never seen again. We believe this was a targeted crime and that there were at least 3 suspects still at large. Today, we're asking for your help. We have partnered with the FBI, ATF, and CBI and formed the Maggie Long Task Force for the specific purpose of solving this murder. Our task force has conducted multiple searches of the house and area around the house. We have interviewed hundreds of people and uncovered witnesses who, believing their information to be valueless, did not come forward until months after the crime. We have collected numerous pieces of evidence, but still yet do not have a clear picture of who murdered Maggie and why. The residents of the town of Bailey and Park County have been helpful, providing us with many tips, descriptions of suspicious people, and leads to track down. They too are outraged at what happened to Maggie, their innocent young neighbor. This task force has been sorting through these leads and is now asking for help from the public. Today we have new information and are confident that people in the community have information that can help us. We have communicated with the family and they are aware of the information being released today. Please respect their privacy at this difficult time. At least 3 people, 3 men, were directly involved in Maggie's murder. Contrary to preliminary examinations, the task force investigation has determined that these suspects spent a significant amount of time in the house with Maggie on December 1st, 2017, and they deliberately chose to take her life. It saddens me greatly to tell you that Maggie was purposely set on fire and burned alive. Previously, we provided a vehicle description and sketch of potential suspects. Over the course of the investigation this past year, we have learned of additional vehicles and suspects that may be involved in Maggie's death. We have put together a flyer detailing updated information and are providing you with this today. Also new today, we're announcing an increased reward amount to $50,000 for information leading to the arrest of Maggie Long's murderers. We have also created a website. It's www.maggielongtaskforce.com. The Maggie Long Task Force developed the website for the purpose of providing you as a public with additional information about this case, and hopefully jogging a memory and generating additional leads. The website contains factual information to include pictures of Maggie, the crime scene, and evidence to encourage you to compare what you might know or have heard with what actually happened. These 3 men may or may not have prior criminal arrest or be who you might expect to be involved in such a crime. The website will allow witnesses to remain anonymous and an opportunity to receive a reward of $50,000 for or information leading to the arrest and conviction of the suspects. Please keep in mind that providing a tip does not mean that person will be considered a suspect unless evidence in this case determines him to be one. We have ruled out over 100 people to date on such tips. Cases like this are sometimes solved by bystanders who have suspicions that someone they know has involvement or knowledge of possible involvement, and they make the decision to come forward. The fire at Maggie's home was set on December 1st, 2017, and investigators have determined that one or more of the suspects may have sustained some sort of injury from that fire. A green safe was taken, along with guns and some of Maggie's belongings. These men will likely have relocated, changed their appearance by shaving or growing facial hair, or cutting or growing out their hair. They may have sold or otherwise disposed of their vehicles, and their moods may have noticeably changed since this event. They may show interest in this case, either by intentionally avoiding any news coverage, or alternatively, actively seeking to discover any details on the case as they emerge. The sketch before you is a mere likeness of one of the three suspects. Please do not eliminate someone of interest simply because he does not resemble a sketch. At least 3 people are involved, and more sketches are forthcoming. The Maggie Long website is specifically designed to assist those of you in the general public who have suspicions that a person you know may have been involved in this crime or have knowledge of it. Somebody knows these suspects well and lives or works with them. They may not have confessed to the crime, but they may have provided you with clues that something terrible happened in December of 2017. We encourage you to explore the website and go to the areas of interest that your friend, family member, neighbor, or coworker may have discussed. You can remain anonymous. Some of the website pages are interactive, and others provide you with an opportunity to leave a tip. Every tip will be addressed, and no tip is considered unimportant. We are asking you to trust your instincts and give us a chance to bring closure to Maggie's family. We have law enforcement have tools in this case to quickly rule out any person who is not involved. Please look at the items taken when Maggie Long was murdered. The suspects likely held on to these for a few days before attempting to discard them, sell them, or give them to someone they trust. To date, we have not located the green safe or the guns. The persons holding these items will be able to identify our suspects. At this time, I cannot provide you with all of the details as to why Maggie was murdered or specific evidence we've obtained during the course of the investigation. However, we wanted to provide you with the website information and encourage you to visit this website if you may have been in the vicinity of Bailey, Colorado, or Maggie's home the day she was murdered, or may have observed something related to her death. This case will remain active and ongoing, and as the newly elected sheriff, I will update you when there is new information and an arrest has been made. In the meantime, I ask that you visit the website to see if there's any information you can provide the task force to help us solve her murder. As mentioned earlier, your tips will remain anonymous if you wish. Any and all leads will be thoroughly reviewed. Myself and the law enforcement agency standing before you understand you demand a full accounting of why Maggie was murdered, and nothing is more important to us than determining the reasons for this horrific tragedy and bringing justice to the persons responsible for Maggie's death. Maggie's murder brings to light why we work together as a law enforcement community when we're counting investigations like this. We hope the murder of an innocent child never happens, but that is why we work with our law enforcement partners to solve violent crimes in our community. This investigation has been a methodical and time-consuming operation, and we are still actively pursuing all leads developed this past year. I cannot commend the task force enough through their diligence and hard work for the duration of this investigation. Please note that the safety of the citizens is a top priority to all of us standing before you today, and nothing is more important than our community's well-being and solving this case. We will continue to work closely with CBI, ATF, and the FBI as we continue to work towards an arrest in this investigation. We will hold a press conference when there is an update with the case. We are providing you with a flyer that includes the additional sketch I mentioned earlier. We also have secured billboards located throughout the Denver and Colorado Springs area to provide the website information to the public. In addition, tomorrow night, the Park County Sheriff's Office and I will be holding a town hall meeting for our community, and I'm happy to address their questions and concerns at that time. The town hall meeting will be held at the Fitzsimmons Middle School in Bailey at 7:00 p.m. For media inquiries, we have established a designated email address. That email address is media@maggielongtaskforce.com. Please feel free to email us for case updates. I'll now take a few questions from you.
Sheriff, this is the first time we've heard about 3 suspects involved in Maggie's murder. How long has the task force known about this? And do you think that this information should have been released earlier?
This information was developed through evidence that was gathered at scene. It wasn't something that was available right away, so it's been worked on. We felt that now was a good time to put that information out to the public.
And do you know when new sketches will be released of the other 2?
There's one new sketch that's being released to you right now with the other old one that we have, and hopefully in the future we might have another one.
So the initial one, that was the first suspect, this is the second, and so we're waiting on a third sketch?
Yes, sir.
You can take it.
Just another question. A year ago, DNA samples were collected from Maggie Long's family members and associates of the family. We never really got a good explanation why that was done. Do you know how many people you collected samples from and just why that was done?
I know that we have collected dozens of DNA samples from people. It's just an investigative tool for us to use that. That's just an investigative tool for us to have those DNA samples from everybody at the house.
Was DNA collected at the scene of the crime?
As part of the processing of the evidence scene, there was numerous items of evidence taken.
You can't say if DNA was collected though?
There was samples of different types of evidence taken from throughout the scene. DNA would have been one of them, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I know you think it was targeted, but do you think she knew the 3 suspects prior to her murder?
We can't say that right now. I don't know the answer to that question. It's a possibility, but we don't know that answer.
2 questions. Were sketches formulated from, you say sketches were formulated from the scene or from evidence, not from eyewitnesses?
No, from eyewitnesses.
From
sketches.
eyewitnesses,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
okay. And you said you cannot say reasons that the incident occurred. Are you saying for purposes of the investigation you can't say? Or you know and you can't say? Or you don't know?
You're going to have to rephrase that question a little bit.
You said you couldn't say the reasons that this may have occurred. Right.
No, we don't know exactly why Maggie Long was murdered. We don't have that answer to that question right now. Yes, sir.
Where do these 3 vehicles fit into the whole narrative of this story?
Well, if you go to that website that I described to you, you'll be able to see, they'll show you where the vehicles were at and their involvement that we think they might have had in it. So I would highly suggest looking at the website, and it could explain that a little bit more clearly.
And I'm just wondering, we went from 1 suspect initially to now 3. Are we getting that from more witnesses coming forward since the time of this crime? Where's that play?
Well, it's throughout the investigation we've developed more and more leads, and like I said, sometimes people, they didn't think it was important at the time, and then they came forward at a later date. So we're able to develop more information about who possibly was involved in this murder.
I know that in cold case investigations, sometimes people may think, oh, this is a minor detail of what happened here. Could you just reiterate and emphasize how important those small things people may have noticed about that time are crucial to this investigation?
Absolutely. You never know. Somebody might have seen somebody driving through the neighborhood slowly, looking around, things like that. I know it's difficult to remember what happened over a year ago. But hopefully because they know that there was a fire that night and the tragedy that happened, then they might jog their memories, that they might remember something that might be able to help us out further on the investigation.
All right, let's go last question, and then of course we're going to do some one-on-ones after.
Sheriff, I was just going to ask, do you know how the house was set on fire? What was used to set the house on fire?
I'm not going to be able to answer that question. That might hinder the investigation. I'd rather not go there on that.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for coming. As we said, the sheriff's going to stay behind with Miri, and then we'll provide updates as they become available.
As you just heard, authorities released a lot of new information in this press conference, including the morbid detail that Maggie had been burned alive. They also disclosed information about at least 2 suspects that had been involved in the crime, releasing sketches about the 2 during the press conference. Details of a 3rd suspect would be released later on, but more on that in a bit. It was learned that at least 1 suspect had sustained injuries that night, possibly the suspect from the initial Bolo alert that had sustained flash burns. Investigators theorized that the suspects had targeted the Long home for robbery, but called the brutal murder of Maggie Long a crime of opportunity. It was believed that when Maggie had gone home that afternoon, she had likely interrupted the robbery in progress. But strangely, the suspects had then spent a substantial amount of time in the home, during which time Maggie was likely held captive. The suspects eventually left, starting the fire that deliberately killed Maggie and caused significant damage to the inside of the home, pictures of which were also shown during the press conference. I hate to give voice to this unfortunate theory, but I can only hope that sexual assault did not play a role in this crime. Investigators believed that the offenders were likely not citizens of Bailey or the immediate area, but had likely moved even further away in the years since. Since starting the fire that killed Maggie, they had likely changed their appearances and made efforts to distance themselves from this story, such as selling the vehicles they had driven that day, as well as the items they had stolen, and had undoubtedly tried to avoid any possible connections to the region since. Over the next couple of years, members of the Maggie Long task force would continue to release information at a trickle. By 2022, investigators had received over 200 tips in the case, which led them to build a rather comprehensive case file. It was believed that at least 3 men had been directly involved in Maggie's murder and had likely spent a significant amount of time inside the Long family home with Maggie on December 1st, 2017. She went home at around 3:30 p.m. and would have arrived at around 4 o'clock, but the call to 911 did not occur until approximately 7, so there are roughly 3 hours unaccounted for, during which time Maggie was likely alone with these 3 men. Sketches of all 3 have been made available and are currently viewable on the FBI's website. All 3 appear to be rather nondescript looking, but specific details might help narrow them down. Suspect number 1 appears to be a white male of average build, with short hair, narrow eyes, and a large nose, ears, and lips. Suspect number 2 appears to be a more unique-looking white male, with a larger build, messier hair kept somewhat shaggy underneath a baseball hat in the sketch, and has larger, rounder eyes, along with a large, flat-looking nose. Suspect number 3 appears thin, and is a white male with a long, narrow face. Like suspect number 2, he has shaggy, unkempt-looking hair, which creeps over his ears and down near his eyes. He also has large ears and a big, protruding chin. In 2019, on the 2nd anniversary of the crime, authorities with the CBI released a statement suggesting that a 4th person may have been involved in this crime. They would not release many details about this possible 4th suspect, such as whether they were male or female, but did reveal that they had long hair. Speaking to The Flume in November of 2019, newly elected Park County Sheriff Tom McGraw stated, "I just think that, because of the nature of this crime, these are people who very likely have criminal backgrounds. It takes a certain mentality and a certain personality type to commit an act like this. To burn a woman alive is not something many people are capable of doing." In the years since, police officials have hesitated to say whether or not they continue to put much credence in these sketches, possibly because of potential changes the suspects have made to their appearance. However, authorities have remained publicly optimistic about the crime being solved, with Sheriff McGraw making his belief known during the same interview I quoted from a moment ago. Usually, when you have a group of people involved in a crime, someone generally talks, or says something that leads to a break in the case. That's another reason I am optimistic that this will eventually be solved. I am actually sort of surprised that hasn't already happened. In 2021, it was announced that police had made an arrest in a string of burglaries that had targeted the homes of Asian American business owners in Colorado and Wyoming between January and July of 2019. The suspects numbered 4 in total, including 3 men and 1 woman, who had specifically targeted the homes of Asian American business owners, primarily those that owned restaurants and nail salons. They had thoroughly researched and surveilled their victims, learning when they would be home and at work, then broke into the homes during the day or early evening. In total, they had stolen approximately $1.4 million worth of cash and jewelry over a 7-month span in 2019. The 4 were connected to the various crime scenes through cell phone records, resulting in the arrest of 3 in 2021: Carlos Flores Molina, Santiago Hoyos Gaviria, and Yeni Zoraya Rodas Flores. The 4th, John Flores Molina, was not arrested, believed to have gone back home to Colombia before police could identify him. Earlier this year, 2022, the 3 that had been arrested pled guilty to various crimes, including counts of violating the Colorado Organized Crime Control Act and theft, and were each sentenced to 10 years in prison and ordered to pay more than $1 million in restitution. Charges are still outstanding for the 4th suspect, John Flores Molina. While there is no indication that they had killed anyone during their robbery spree, the circumstances of this just seem to be too coincidental to me. According to statements made by police, at least 3 men were believed to have played a part in Maggie's death, with a 4th unidentified suspect possible. Maggie had interrupted a burglary in progress and was likely killed because she had borne witness to the suspects and their crime. A little over a year later, these 4 would specifically target Asian American business owners in Colorado for theft. Maybe there is no connection, but the circumstances here just seem to be too great for me to ignore mentioning. Later that same year, 2021, it was learned that the FBI was investigating Maggie's death as a potential hate crime. In a statement written to news station CBS 4, officials with the FBI wrote, "The FBI is investigating the murder of Maggie Long as a hate crime matter. A hate crime is a criminal offense against a person or property motivated in whole or in part by the individual's bias against a race, religion, disability, ethnicity or national origin, sexual orientation, gender, or gender identity." This news came as a bit of a revelation to the family of Maggie Long, whose sisters told CBS News that they had not noticed any anti-Asian discrimination during their many years living in Park County. But after more than 3 years of no resolution in the case, they were glad to hear that the investigators were still working on it in every possible way, as they had not been in close contact with the members of the Maggie Long task force in quite some time. It is unknown what led federal investigators to reclassify the event as a hate crime, with the FBI referring press inquiries to their brief initial statement. It is possible that Maggie and/or her family had been targeted because of their Asian American heritage, and she might have been burned alive for that reason. However, many believed that this was a purely bureaucratic move, which allowed the investigation to obtain more resources from the federal government due to the hate crime designation. The preceding year had seen a lot of hate crimes towards Asian Americans in America after the outbreak of COVID-19, and this designation might have been more of a procedural move than an investigative breakthrough. Nonetheless, the hate crime designation succeeded in at least one avenue. It attracted a lot more attention to the case and shined a spotlight on the murder of Maggie Long for the first time in a couple of years. Sadly, though, this was the last major public breakthrough in the case. Just recently, in December of 2022, Maggie was remembered by her friends and family, as well as members of the local police department, who continue to oversee the investigation into her death. On the 5th anniversary of her murder, December 1st, a statement was released by the sheriff's office, which read, "While the Park County Sheriff's Office, the 11th Judicial District Attorney's Office, and our state and federal partners have never stopped the search for the people responsible for Maggie's death, we renew our commitment to her family and the Bailey community on this somber anniversary, and beyond, in our quest for justice in this case." This statement was released alongside another one from Maggie's loved ones, which read, "Maggie deserves justice. She was an irreplaceable, innocent soul with a majestic presence. She brought a joy to our family, her friends, and her community that will never be forgotten. 5 years ago, she was horrifically murdered. We have endured an active investigation while processing the loss of our beloved Maggie. Our hope is that someone with information will come forward so those responsible for Maggie's death will be apprehended and held accountable. No other family should have to suffer such senseless loss. Please help us attain justice and honor Maggie's infectious spirit and zest for life. We want her legacy to not be overshadowed by tragedy. Help us restore Maggie's optimistic and loving image to the forefront of our memories. A reward of up to $75,000 is available for anyone that helps lead authorities to the arrest and conviction of the individuals responsible. Per the FBI website, additional reward money may also be available, which was raised by the Park County Sheriff's Office, the ATF, the FBI, the CBI, and the family of Maggie Long. All continue to work to raise awareness for this case and believe that answers will eventually be found. Park County Sheriff Tom McGraw stated, "Someone has that key piece of information that will lead to the arrest of those responsible for Maggie's murder. We ask that people be bold and come forward to share what they know to help us solve this case." Anyone with information is encouraged to reach out to their local FBI field office, or if you live out of the country, your nearest American embassy or consulate. You can remain anonymous if you so choose, and can also reach out directly to the Maggie Long Task Force through the tip line at 303-239-4243, or through email at maggie.long.tips@state.co.us. Links will be included in the show description. As of this episode's recording, the story of Maggie Long remains unresolved.